Hi, my name is Kenny Rains, and I am coming to you from what's normally the 5 for 5 podcast, where we talk about football and talk about life lessons. But today is a special episode, and also for those who end up finding this, who maybe you got diagnosed with what I have, and you found me. My name is Kenny Rains. I am 29 years old and live in Batesville, Arkansas, and you'll find out a little bit more who I am as we go through this. So anyway, the reason why I'm recording this now is 2 weeks ago, I got diagnosed with an extremely rare form of cancer known as uveal melanoma. Essentially, it's eye cancer. So I have a tumor in my right eye right now as we speak. And I'm currently recording this in a Mayo Clinic boardroom that they were kind enough to let me use. And there have just been so many hundreds of people reaching out and just wanting to know what's going on and what happened and the treatment. And I just felt that this was probably the best format to give everybody an update that wants to be updated and know what's going on. So essentially 3 months ago, my vision started to go blurry, and I thought that it was just something pretty routine. Maybe my prescription in my eye was changing. So I went to an optometrist a couple of times, and they changed the prescription in my right eye, said I had an astigmatism, give it a few days when they gave me astigmatism contacts and see if that helps. And when you're in the office, you think maybe it did help, and I go home and I'm like, it's still blurry. And that went on for a couple months, went there a couple times, and then I went out to San Diego for work. And whenever I came back from San Diego, I noticed that it was no longer blurry anymore. It was, on top of being blurry, things were physically distorted. So whenever I look at a box, it's no longer a box. Whenever I look at a straight line, it's no longer a straight line. And my background is in optics, so manufacturing optics. It's a thing called spherical distortion, and it's fairly common to see that in optics. So whenever I saw that, to me, that was kind of an alarm that, okay, this is more than just a prescription change, and my boss's urging made me go to an ophthalmologist, which is, for those of you that don't know the difference, an ophthalmologist is an MD doctor. And so if you have an eye problem, go to an ophthalmologist. So I went to an ophthalmologist in Batesville, Arkansas. Luckily, they were able to get me in very quickly, and they're looking at my eye and running these exams. And, it's one of those things that when you spend 2 hours at a doctor, it's probably not good. And so, Dr. Lowry was really good, very thorough, and he just said, man, I don't see this very often, but it looks like a melanoma, so I'm going to refer you to a specialist. I went to another ophthalmologist the next day named Dr. Davis, and he agreed with Dr. Lowry, but he also noticed that my retina was separating. And so he sent me to Retina Associates in Little Rock, Arkansas, where they did a more in-depth search and saw, yes, indeed, it's a melanoma. There is no ocular oncologist in the state of Arkansas. It's a super rare field. Apparently, there's only 8 clinics in the U.S. that have ocular oncologists. To give you an idea of how rare this type of cancer is, this is about, depending on what papers you read, it's between 5 in a million to 6 in a million. So extremely rare form of cancer. And so then Retina Associates referred me to the Hamilton Eye Institute in Memphis, Tennessee. So I went there, saw Dr. King, and they were very thorough, got me in extremely quickly. And so they for sure said this is absolutely uveal melanoma, and laid out the different treatment options. And I'll just say mentally, when you hear that C word, when you hear cancer, that is a very scary thing, especially at 29 to hear. I've got a 15-month-old son at the house. I'm happily married to my beautiful wife, Suzanne. And there's a lot of stuff that starts going on in your mind when you hear that. And then as you start to do more research, to be honest with you, it's not great. If you look into the papers on uveal melanoma, the statistics that I've read and have been told, it's anywhere from an 18 to a 50 up to 72% chance of it metastasizing and spreading. So metastasis is a another word for the cancer, spreads from where it originally started. And so in my case, to the best of their knowledge, they've not been able to, thank God, find any tumors anywhere else. It's just localized in my eye. But melanomas are a very aggressive form of cancer that they can spread. And so trying to deal with this quickly is one of the best solutions to that. So after Hamilton Eye Clinic, I've also got some background liver and colon issues. I've got primary sclerosing cholangitis. I've had that since I was 18. Super rare liver disease, and then also ulcerative colitis, which is a little bit more common but still fairly rare. Falls in the irritable bowel syndrome category, irritable bowel disease, similar to Crohn's. You may know somebody with Crohn's or celiac. And so I've been gluten and dairy free since I was 18. I actually played 5 years of college football with both those diseases. I don't know many other people that can say that. So I'm used to dealing with stuff medically, but if I'm completely honest, the eye thing really scared me, and it's because I've had this fear of going blind since I was a little kid. I don't know why, I just have. And that's literally what I'm doing right now is I'm going blind in my right eye, even just as the tumor grows into what's called your macula, which is where the image forms on the back of your eye. So that melanoma, that tumor, is coming up from the bottom. And the way your eye works and your brain works is that image actually flips. So you see the world upside down and your brain flips it. And so as that melanoma grows in from the bottom, I actually start to lose vision and peripheral vision from the top. And so if I just look through my right eye, it's incredibly blurry, things are incredibly distorted. It'd be extremely hard to function as a human being if that's what my total vision was. And so ended up going to Mayo Clinic just because I already had some doctors up here, and I knew that it would be challenging to deal with the liver and colon while we're fighting cancer. And so wanted to get a second opinion up here, and met with Dr. Dalvin. She's been awesome. She recommended the same thing as Memphis. So she said, same thing, it's a melanoma. The size of the tumor is about half an inch, anywhere from 12.2 millimeters in diameter to 12.5 millimeters in diameter. And it's about 4.5 millimeters thick for reference. I'll try to slap a picture of the thing up here if you're watching this. If you're listening, it's essentially just a round tumor in the middle of the back of my eye. So what's the treatment? So the standard treatment, there's two options. So up until the 80s, the only option was to take your eye out. It's a procedure called inoculation. It's about as scary as it sounds. They literally just rip your eye out. So the alternative therapy that was made in the 80s is what's called radiation plaque therapy, or I believe it's called brachytherapy. I got a white paper on it. Let me see. I've got all sorts of different white papers here. So it's called brachytherapy. And so what that involves is they actually take a precision manufactured gold plate. Once again, I'll try to slap some pictures up here. I took a picture of it today. And they put iodine 125 isotope, what looks like a grain of rice, into this piece of gold. And they put that behind your tumor. They sew it in. So at Mayo Clinic, they would sew it in on a Monday. It radiates the tumor for 5 days straight, 24/7. We're not allowed to be around little kids, pregnant women, immunocompromised people, because there's literally radiation coming out of my eye. And then they'll take it out on a Friday. So in the grand scheme of treatments, that's really quick. 5 days for radiation is extremely fast, and it's extremely effective. So I'm very fortunate that even though I have such a rare form of cancer, the tumor, at least in your eye, is extremely treatable if caught early. It's over 95% success rate in the tumor immediately being dead once they pull that plate out of the back of your eye. So that's good news. The bad news is the likelihood of metastasis or spreading to other organs. And so we really won't know how likely that is for me specifically until they do what's called a fine needle biopsy, where they take a little piece of that tumor and they'll go and they'll do a genetic study on that tumor to figure out what genes this specific cancer is made of. And then that would break me into 3 classes. Essentially low, medium, and high risk. So group 1A is the lowest risk, group 1B is medium risk, Group 2 is high risk. So statistically, the papers would say 1A would be about a 2% risk of metastasis within, believe the window's 5 years. Group 1B would be about a 22% risk of metastasis within about 5 years. And then Group 2 is about a 72% risk of metastasis within 5 years. To also give you an idea, I'm extremely young to get this type of cancer. The average age of diagnosis, from what I've read, is 66. And the actual age that somebody's diagnosed on average is about 70. So 29 to have this is very young. There are people younger than me that have had this. In fact, I met a 31-year-old in the lobby who got it, and he's 7 years out. He had a photon beam radiation treatment over in Boston and is doing real well. Lost a little bit of his vision, but he's a paramedic and is working every day and looked completely normal. Couldn't tell it. Just like as you look at me now, it's not like I clearly have a tumor bulging out of my eye. So that kind of gives you an update of what the actual treatments are. Now, what my specific plan is I'm going to start this radiation plaque therapy September 27th. So I will fly up to Mayo the day before. I'll get a COVID test. That comes back negative. Then they'll go and put me through for surgery. They put me all the way out, thank God. So that way I don't have to have a needle put in my eye or feel that or have the plate stitched into my eye. So then I'll be in a hotel room, be isolated for 5 days. So from September 27th to October 1st, and they'll take the plaque out October 1st, and essentially I'm free to go as soon as the next day. And there's very, very few complications from this, so it should go pretty smooth. Everybody is very confident about being able to eliminate the tumor in my eye. And so what I want to talk about now, though, is that mental battle. It's real, man. The cancer word puts you in a place mentally unlike many other things. I've certainly faced my fair share of hurdles in my life. You know, I've been fighting ever since I was a little kid. You know, I was diagnosed with a learning disorder, really couldn't read very well, couldn't speak very well. And, you know, I'm an engineer with a master's degree and have no problem doing public speaking now. So also, you know, I've had ulcerative colitis for as long as I can remember. You know, I wasn't very good at football and ended up going Division I, becoming a team captain in 2014 at Arkansas State, at Division I in Arkansas. And, you know, I remember whenever I was 18, really fighting this liver disease is when I first got diagnosed with what's called primary sclerosing cholangitis, it's PSC. And I remember the first question I asked the doctor was, can I still play football? And I remember the doctor looked at me and said, you know who Walter Payton is? I said, absolutely, you know who Sweetness is. And so he said, well, Walter Payton died 3 years after he got diagnosed with this. And so it was on my 18th birthday when I got diagnosed with PSC. And I just remember sitting there thinking, it's like, man, if I die at 21, like, what does that look like? You know, do I believe in God? Do I believe in heaven and hell? Like, there were just so many questions that just come rushing through your mind, you know, when you get any sort of a diagnosis, whether it be cancer, some other thing, you know, it just sets your mind down a path. And so I just want to describe to you how that has been for me and what I'm currently doing to try to put myself on a better path, in hopes that wherever you're at watching this, wherever you're at listening to this, that maybe you can take some words of encouragement from this. And so for me, you know, the biggest thing, the fear that I would say that just absolutely grabbed me by the throat was the thought that, okay, if this metastasizes in 2 to 3 years, typical outcome from that is statistically it's not good. So, you know, if I die before my son's 4 or 5, he's not even gonna remember who I am. And that really grabs me, really does. I love my son to death. I love my wife to death. I would storm the gates of hell with a water gun for my wife, my son, and Jesus Christ. And so, you know, the thought of not being there for them absolutely grips me. Sometimes makes it hard to sleep, you know, and that's very real. And, you know, I want you, wherever you're at, to acknowledge whatever fears you have in your life, because they're probably real. But I don't think you need to let it in there. For me, what I'm trying to do is turn that fear into fuel. So what are the things you can control? I had a strength conditioning coach, Coach Russell, whenever I was playing for Gus Malzahn in 2012, who had these little EAT bracelets, and it stood for enthusiasm, attitude, and toughness. The 3 things you can control, right? So I can control mentally how I react to the things. I cannot control the things that happen to me, right? But I can certainly control the attitude that I'm bringing to that, how much enthusiasm I'm bringing to that, as well as the level of toughness that I'm going to have during the fight. And so how am I practically doing that? I'm trying to go more on the offense. You know, the last 2 weeks have been a lot on the defense, and it's just kind of you're getting bad news and you're trying to roll with the punches as best you can. It's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of what ifs. And so now at least there's a plan for radiation to deal with the tumor in my eye. And then how I'm going to try to deal with the risk of metastasis is I'm going to try to eat as clean as I possibly can. So really going to try to go to a Mediterranean pescatarian style diet. So, you know, if it's got more than 5 ingredients and a caveman couldn't find it, I'm probably not going to eat it. And try right now, I'm at 6'4", 275 pounds, try to cut down to 235. So about 40 pounds in 4 months is my goal. And, you know, is this stuff that I'm going to tell you that I'm going to do going to cure cancer and 100% guarantee I'm not going to get it? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what it does at a minimum. At a minimum, it puts me in a place mentally where I'm no longer just sitting and hoping that things don't happen. I'm actively engaged in the fight. And so I hope that one encouragement that you will take is, if you are worried about your bills, if you have mental health issues, if you have other health issues, you know, whatever fight you're finding yourself in today, I hope that you will take some time and figure out what are the things that I can control and go and try to take care of those things as best as you can. So the other things that I'm looking at is just different, you know, how do I optimize my nutrition, trying to eat a ton of fruits and veggies. So I'm going to do a lot of smoothies. And just really try to eat a ton of healthy whole foods. They say eat the rainbow. So, you know, all sorts of different colors have all sorts of different antioxidants and flavonoids and these different things that do have cancer fighting properties. To be real, there's not like any research in regards to that stuff with this specific type of cancer I have. There's quite a bit of research on breast cancer and prostate cancer and some of these much more common ones, and probably some of that stuff applies. There's a thing called, I think it's called Eat Your Way Out of Disease. And it basically talks about an angiogenic diet, and that we all develop cancer. 40% of the people watching this video will get cancer at some point in their life. That's a crazy statistic, but it's a real statistic. Most people don't get it till later on in life, but almost half of the people watching this will get cancer at some point. And even the ones that never get diagnosed, if they did an autopsy on you, they'd probably find some cancer that was just never found and never problematic. So we're all forming cancer cells, but it's whenever they get plugged up to blood vessels that they're able to grow. So that's where tumors come from. And so they grow from being able to get oxygen, being able to get nutrients, and not only do the blood vessels feed them and allow them to grow, the blood vessels now also give them an avenue out of wherever they're at so that they can metastasize and spread. So that's one thing I'm kind of looking into, is there's specific foods that lower your body's angiogenesis. So potentially lowering your risk of having cancer spread. There are some medications out there that are FDA approved that do that, but it's very, very specific for cancer. The diet thing tends to be something that it's certainly not going to hurt you. You know, if you think about what are some things I could do to increase my risk of cancer? Well, if I went outside and I smoked and I ate McDonald's for every meal, you know, and I'm eating a bunch of processed foods, my risk for cancer is going to go up. So I'm trying to do everything in my power to make that risk go down. And ultimately, all I can do is what I can do. You know, I fight as hard as I can fight, and God sorts everything out. And so I have faith in that. I know that God has certainly brought me through some pretty wild stuff. For those of you that really know me, and for those of you that don't, you know, hopefully in the future I'll be able to tell some more of those stories. but I have absolutely been through some things, and the same God that got me through those things in the past is the same God that will help me get through this. And so I have confidence in that, and I appreciate the hundreds of people that have reached out and been praying for me. And I do just want to tell a quick story about a friend of mine, and I'll try not to get emotional when I tell the story, but last weekend, me and my wife went to Arkansas State's home opener against UCA on September 4th. And the night before, there was actually Hall of Honor induction. And two of my buddies that I played football with, Ryan Applin, who's coach at Arkansas State today, and Damari Davis, who's currently team captain for the New Orleans Saints linebacker, got inducted into the Hall of Fame along with another friend of mine, Todd Baumgartner. And whenever I came a little bit late to the thing, my wife had a flat tire. It was a crazy week, man. Just stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff. And so, I got there a little bit late and got it to my seat, sit with my friends, with one of my old coaches. And Todd gets up to the podium, and this is his Hall of Honor. Like, this is his moment. This is spotlights on him. And the very first thing that Todd does, I hadn't even talked to him, hadn't even told him that this happened. And he just said, I'm going to go off script, and I just want to take some time because there's a young man in here that's 29, that's got a beautiful wife and a little 15-month-old son at the house, and he's diagnosed with melanoma, and I just want to take some time to pray for him. And so everybody prayed for me. Nobody even knew it was me. And I'm sitting right in front of him, and I've been doing really well. Just mentally going through this battle, felt like I'd really turned a corner that night before. And I just kind of lost it when he did that. Just kind of cried. Luckily, everybody's head was bowed, but that meant so much to me that a guy would take his time in the limelight to pray for me and my family. And that's special. That's special. We all need people like that. And so, I hope that you have somebody in your life that prays for you. And I also hope that you're the kind of person that instead of just saying, hey, I'll pray for you, take the time to pray for them right then. Just do it. It makes such a big difference. I mean, the absolute best thing that you can do for somebody is bring them their problems, their baggage, whatever they're going through, in front of our Heavenly Father that loves us and cares for us. So that's just something that really has meant so much to me, is all the people that have been praying for us. So the other thing, I just want to address some common questions I've been asked. So I think the most common one has been, why did this happen to you? That's a hard question. I've been through a lot. Just in the last 5 years, my dad died. My father-in-law killed himself. I've had my liver disease struggles. Last year, I was involved in an absolutely horrific level 1 trauma. Had to get 4 units of blood transfused, almost lost my left hand, left foot. Dealt with a lot of mental issues from that, and also involved in that. And, I have been through a lot of stuff. And I think it's appropriate that before this started, about 3 weeks ago, I got to do chapel for the Lion College football team. Try to help out with them, try to be the chaplain for the players. And I share the story of Joseph. And for those of you that don't know the story of Joseph, you can check out Genesis 37 through 50. It's a fantastic story, one of my favorite ones in the whole Bible. But if I had to just sum up that story, it's a story about a guy who goes through things he would have never picked, ever have picked. And he does the best he can with where he's at, with what he has. And God is able to redeem and use those circumstances to train him and prepare him for what's in front of him, which ultimately Joseph went from being a slave to then being unjustly thrown in prison and being a prisoner for years, to ultimately become second in all of Egypt, that helps deliver Egypt through one of the worst famines that it ever had, to not only save the Egyptians, but to save the Israelites. And it's a fantastic story about a guy who is put in things he would have never picked for himself, but God's able to use those things to prepare him for his purpose in life. And so that's how I view this. If you think about the greatest people you know, you tend to remember the mountaintops. You tend to remember the best moments about them. But those people weren't made at the mountaintops. Those people were made in the valleys. Those people were forged in fire, right? Like, that's where warriors are made. There's no champions that come through and people write books about them, talk about them, if they never had any struggle, if they never had any adversity, if they never overcame anything. And so that's what this is. This is a fight. It's a valley. It's a point in my life that I'm confident that God will use for my good, for my family's good. But to be real with you, I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not just particularly tickled about it. I wouldn't pick it, but it's where I'm at. And so I'm going to do the best I can with where I'm at, with what I've got. And so, I also just want to say that ultimately, I see myself on the other side of this already. I see myself as being somebody who goes on to do motivational speaking and being able to preach in different churches and being able to help people when they're at their lowest and just encourage them that the same God that was there with you in the mountaintop is there with you in the valley. I always go to Psalm 23. It's kind of my go-to passage whenever I'm going through struggles. And I think most people have at least heard Psalm 23 verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And I take a lot of encouragement from that, because, man, it's in the valley that you really need somebody with you. And I just want to say that's been one of the incredible things that I will say about cancer is the way that our church has rallied around us, the way that my family, my friends have rallied around me, the Batesville community, the Arkansas State, Jonesboro community. It really almost brings me to tears thinking about it. It's phenomenal, the support that I've gotten. And I just want to say thank you so much for that support. I want to say thank you for your prayers. I want to just say thank you for your love. And ultimately, I plan to try to record and just document this. I found nothing on the internet in regards to somebody going through uveal melanoma. There's just, if it's out there, I hadn't seen it. So I want to at least try to be an example for somebody else. Maybe somebody else is going through this, or maybe you're just young, you got cancer, maybe you're old. Maybe you got a divorce. Like, maybe you're just going through some sort of struggle and you need encouragement. I want to try to be there for those people. And also just want to give a shout out to people struggling with mental health. I want to just give you full permission to say it is okay to not be okay. Statistically, about 1 in 4 people who are watching this, who are out there in the world, are going through some sort of mental issue, whether that be anxiety, whether that be depression, PTSD, maybe bipolar, schizophrenic, all of these different mental issues. And there's a real stigma about it. I learned that personally last year. People look at you different whenever you have something going on mentally. And I hate that that's true, but it's reality. And I just want to say that just like if you broke your ankle on the football field, you would go to an orthopedic surgeon and people would look at you funny if you didn't. It really should be the same thing mentally. If you have something going on mentally, if you're struggling with your cancer diagnosis, if you're struggling with whatever you have going on in life, maybe you lost a kid, maybe you are going through extremely difficult times, you lost a loved one got cancer, it is okay to not be okay. Go get help. Go talk to your pastor. Go talk to a counselor. Go talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Each one of those people are going to bring different things to the game in regards to how they're going to try to help you fix your problem. But I just want to encourage you, go and talk to somebody. And if you know somebody that's struggling with something mentally, I know from experience when my father-in-law was struggling mentally that it scared me. It absolutely scared me to the point that I didn't want to say something or do something that screwed it up, so I didn't do anything. And I just want to say from experience that I think one of the best things you can do is just reach out to that person as you see them in their need. Tell them you love them, tell them you're here for them, pray for them, and just say, hey, look, I'm here to listen. If you want to talk, and if you don't, we don't have to say another word about it. But ultimately, that stuff in that person's mind that you're concerned about, it's already there. You're not going to put it into their head. And so I just wanted to say that because I know that there's some people out there that are going to watch this that are struggling with that. And so, I'm going to try to build a website called feartofuel.org where I put up different resources, just the different stuff I'm researching, my journey through this. And ultimately, I hope that it's helpful to somebody. And just want to, once again, thank you all so much for your love, care, and support through this time. And we will get through this together. And ultimately, we will kick cancer's ass. Thank you. Love you all.